Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for dropping by this video. And I would like to extend maybe it'll sound kind of funny, but I want to say congratulations. You are still alive. You're alive today. If you're watching this video, you are alive, and a very big congratulations to you. I'm not referring to what's going on right now in the world, March 2020. What I'm referring to is that according to Bruno Groening's teaching, which I take to be the most accurate expression of the teachings of Christ that I've ever heard, two things to keep in mind about our lifetime in this body. First, according to Bruno Groening, the time of our leaving this body is set. It's already set in stone. That just as in essence, our birth was destined, so is our death, according to Bruno Groening. There's one condition though. If someone comes to the place in their life where they're no longer willing or able to learn or grow spiritually, or their life circumstances have become such that they're no longer able to learn or grow, then according to Bruno Groening, what happens is an early recall, meaning, yes, our time of, I don't like the word death, but the death of the body, the time I like to say departing or leaving the body, that is set. And it can happen, according to Bruno Groening, it can happen a little earlier if we come to the place where we're no longer willing or able to learn. So congratulations. You still have the willingness to learn and grow spiritually, and your environment is such that it's still possible for you to learn and grow spiritually. So good job, everybody. And so let's make really good use of this time and really take in some good energy, because without being full of energy, it's kind of hard to live life. It's kind of hard to do anything. It's kind of hard to breathe unless we have sufficient life energy. So let's take it in now. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards, back in an upright position, neither stiff nor slouched, and if possible, not leaning against the back of your chair. So if you need to, that's okay. It's preferable not to, but if you need to, please do. Then, please close your eyes and really separate yourself from all illness. Really separate yourself from the idea that you even have any kind of illness. Another way that Bruno spoke of this is handing the illness over to him or to God. So really just distancing ourselves from illness and the thought of illness. Now focus your entire attention on your healing. And now ask to receive the healing stream, the divine energy. And notice what you feel. And please view, experience, know every sensation as a healing in process. If negative thinking arises, hand it over with vigor. Noticing what you feel, every sensation, a step towards your recovery. Even if the same feeling of pain or discomfort is there, please view it in a different light now. View it as a healing in progress. Oh, welcome, one and all. Welcome, yes, divine family. Hmm. Thanks to the teachings of Bruno, I'm honestly starting to view every human being as my brother and sister. We have a common father and a common mother, a heavenly father and an earthly mother. So welcome, brothers and sisters. So, so Bruno Groening spoke of reincarnation from time to time. He didn't really push it. He was very adamant that it was a fact, but it wasn't something that he went about preaching to everyone. Knowing Bruno, I'm guessing he would just walk into a room, if he's talking to a group, and he would just sense the level of openness to it. And, Freddie Alfred Haas once asked him a question about it, and Bruno Groening said, "Oh, at last," and I don't have the exact quote, but something like, "Oh, at last, someone I can speak to about such things." So I don't have the sense that Bruno Groening sort of concealed that teaching or other teaching, more that he was just aware of where the person was at, was able to speak to them and share what was helpful for them on their journey. So one reason people don't believe in reincarnation is because they don't have memories of the past lives. And I've been a pretty firm believer in reincarnation for quite some time, but every now and then I have some doubts, and that's one of them. Is like, well, why don't I remember it? Hmm. Here's what Bruno Groening has to say on the topic. This is from Powers of the Spirit, page 222. As long as a human being is unaware of their former life, they can make amends for their guilt by making an unbiased new beginning more easily than when they are aware of the spiritual reasons for why they must live through precisely the destiny and be together with precisely these people out of all human beings. For that reason, I cannot answer your question as to why. Oh, someone had asked a question before. Why was it not possible for a normal mortal, such as this particular person who asked, to know something about their own former life? So, again, here's what Bruno said. For this reason, I cannot answer your question as to the why, since a partial remembering only causes bewilderment. The whole trunk of knots would have to be unpacked, and you still could not bear that yet. Take note, not yet. Later, when you have overcome a great deal, the memory comes entirely of itself. But then it will not burden you anymore, since that heaviness will already have been dissolved. Hmm. So first and foremost, Bruno points out that the lifetime that we have, that some, if not all, of the circumstances of our current lifetime are a process. I don't want to say all, but at least some of the circumstances of our current lifetime are an opportunity to make right past long wrongs, to learn, um, to correct mistakes. Let's say, for example, I don't have a roommate right now, but let's say, so Princess Kitty Cat is in the room with me and my cat. So let's say in a past lifetime, uh, uh, Prince, I'm just being silly right now, but let's say in the past lifetime, Princess was the person and I was the cat. Bruno, to my knowledge, never spoke about human to animal reincarnation, but I'm just having fun here. And in this lifetime, I'm the person and Princess is the cat. Um, and let's say there were some things that were not right in that relationship. Well, if she and I were able to remember um, all of these things, then that would cloud our present time relationship. Meaning, in every relationship, there's lessons to be learned, and according to Bruno Groening, there's lessons from the past. And without knowing anything about the past, it's just kind of this. We show up fresh, even though there's sort of um, how to say there might be a vague impression or maybe some feelings, but we just show up and then do the best we can and hopefully learn and grow from it. It's a little bit of a silly analogy, but I hope it makes clear what Bruno was trying to say. That um, oh, that was a very silly. Let's say two people who used to really fight all the time. Well, if they, let's say me and my roommate, I don't have a roommate right now. Let's say in a past life we used to fight all the time. And then in this life we come together and then one or both of us recognizes, oh, hey, in a past lifetime we used to fight so all the time. So let's not do that this time. Instead, that would be if we were able to remember the lives. According to Bruno Groening, instead, we just show up and we reconnect, and maybe there's the temptation to fight again. Or maybe there's situations that could make it very easy for us to fight. And so, without having knowledge of our past lives, it's a fresh opportunity to make a different choice and to find harmony. That's a much better example. So let's reflect on this and take in more divine life energy. noticing what we feel, taking in the good, knowing that every sensation is healing happening if we've given away the disease or burden. And we can see a little bit of this happening, whenever we enter into a new relationship or a new friendship. We have tendencies from not just past lives, but from this life um, that readily appear. For example, I'm just starting to date someone new, and we just had our second phone date since California is on lockdown. Um, and after the second date, I just it was really enjoyable, and I felt a little fuzzy. So I did some journaling, and I became aware of some thoughts and feelings that, and some, in essence, negative habits that I've played out over and over and over in romantic relationships. So I'm very grateful for that insight. And there's a way in which we just keep doing what we do. We just keep doing what we do until we become aware of it and make a new choice. I believe this is why Bruno Groening called us at the end of the day, to the best of our ability, to review the entire day, to recognize where we had fallen short, to make a determination to do better. That way, that's until we really reflect on our behavior, then we're just running on habit. And generally, I can speak for myself, and I'm assuming for most people, that habits not really living. And also, um, well, Bruno Groening talked about overcoming the force of habit. As I really reflect on that, what comes to me is, operating from habit isn't really living, whereas operating in connection to God and moment by moment asking, what's my next step? What shall I do? Or just being really connected to the divine and then just spontaneously making harmonious choices. That feels more like life to me. So let's reflect on this, that Bruno called us to self reflection, to reflect on every action, every word, to reflect on our day at the end of the day, to overcome the force of habit. Continuing to observe the body. Continuing to view every sensation as a step towards recovery. And then in this section we read, Bruno Groening pointed out um, that at some point, when we've really, he said, overcome a great deal, then memories of our past lives just come naturally. Very fascinating. So, two quotes of Bruno's that I just think are so Actually, this is a quote of Bruno's I haven't read in a long time. Let us remember this, to always pay attention to our thoughts and not to play with evil. That is, not to underestimate it, for it has might. Yet, we should also remember that God is almighty. Wow. So, according to Bruno Groening, if we are not aware, if we're not really aware of how strong evil is, we're playing with it. In essence, we're not taking it seriously, right? Um, if I just take out a sharp knife and just start juggling it, and I don't really have skill at juggling knives, I'm playing with it. I'm underestimating the damage it can do with me. I'm not taking it seriously. So let's stop playing with evil. Let's stop thinking, this is why, many, and I was one of them. When I first came to this teaching, I was like, evil, yuck. Like, I didn't like that Bruno used that word. Um, but now I understand why. Because this thing that leads to all the problems that all of us experience, and then all the problems in the world, it's very nasty. It's very vicious. And it's the cause of all suffering, all disease, um, the horrific treatment of this planet, all the acts of violence, all the acts of violence throughout history, according to Bruno Groening, and I would argue according to Christ, they have one cause, this nasty, nasty thing called evil. So if we don't take evil seriously, Bruno says we're playing with it. Just like someone juggling a knife who's not a skilled knife juggler. They're playing with the knife. They're underestimating it. But as we do this, we don't want to then take on fear. Because Bruno says, yet we should also remember that God is almighty. Hmm. So the word that comes to me is vigilance, not to be fearful of evil, but to be vigilant of it, and then to have focused attention on that which is almighty, which has all power. Now, all of this is so apropos. I think that's a friend. So appropriate for um, this interesting period in history. For us to really look around the world and reflect what is causing all of this. Now, I don't mean, which person caused it, or um, is this some kind of plot or conspiracy? I don't mean that, because even if it is, I've heard people say what's happening in the world today is some kind of conspiracy, and maybe it is. I don't know, but even if it's a conspiracy, knowing that still doesn't get at the root. Like, if we realize, oh, this is let's just say something is a conspiracy, well, knowing that, it still doesn't help us end it. Sure, maybe it helps us react or deal a little bit, but that doesn't end that particular conspiracy or all other sort of nefarious plots. Bruno Groening pointed out that all these things have one source. Now, I'm not saying don't take positive action. I'm not saying don't do activism if you feel called to that. But what I'm saying, and if I'm understanding Bruno Groening correctly, is recognize what's the real cause of whatever particular problem you're doing activism for, but also of all problems. And what is the solution? God, and living in harmony with nature. And what's the way to get us there? Faith. Not per se faith as a belief system, but faith in the sense of trust, entrusting, reliance on. Here's what Bruno Groening said. You must not be afraid of disaster. You have, after all, the duty and obligation to immediately establish the connection with God. I don't know if establish, it's more like take in. The German is more like take in or absorb. Absorb the connection or link with God. And God will hold his protecting hand over you. Earth is kind of weird. I mean, it's divinely created, but just if you take a step back, like there's this thing called evil. It's very nasty and vicious. There's all these resources, especially in the 21st century. I mean, I live in California, very holistic, very spiritual, all these resources to cope with all problems, but none of them are going to actually solve the problem. And so when I say, the what I mean, I guess what I'll say is, 21st century society is weird. Like it just offers all these solutions. And many of them are, quote, spiritual, but they don't even get at the root. So here we are on this earth in these bodies, and there's this thing called evil, this very powerful thing that, according to Bruno Groening, if we don't respect its power, we're actually playing with something dangerous. If we don't take it seriously. So we need to, according to Bruno Groening, we need to recognize its power, take it seriously, and then turn to the one who has all power. To recognize, oh, this opponent I'm up against is mighty. It's actually stronger than me. I need that which is stronger than it. It takes a little humility. And it also takes the recognition that evil only has one solution. Bruno Groening spoke of people constantly making experiments to try and fix their problems. Hmm. So let's reflect on all this. See if you agree. Um, See if you agree that Bruno Groening's right, that we need to take evil seriously, that there's only one thing that's really stronger than evil, and that we need to turn to that to solve all of our problems. And if all problems have one cause, please don't take my word for it. Bruno didn't even ask us to take his word for us. He did ask us to really reflect and convince ourselves of the truth. Taking in this energy. If it feels right, really deciding to rely on God. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining in. I'm going to begin our closing. So Bruno Groening pointed out that our time here on this earth is to learn. And the fact that we're still alive today means there's still the possibility for each one of us to learn and grow. Bruno pointed out that if there wasn't that capacity to learn anymore, we would actually die, i.e., this earthly life would end. That's how essential learning is to our time here on this planet. When asked about reincarnation, Bruno Groening pointed out that the reason why people can't remember their past lives is once again to facilitate learning. If two people were able to remember how they interacted in a past life, it would hinder the learning that needs to happen in this life. And Bruno pointed out that sooner or later, that once one had really freed oneself from all burden, enough evil or guilt, as he called it, that we would be able to remember our past lives. We also looked at the necessity, and one of the primary lessons here on this Earth School is the recognition of the power of evil. Bruno pointed out that if we're not taking evil seriously, that we're actually playing with it. I brought in the metaphor of juggling knives, that we're actually playing with something very dangerous by not taking it seriously, not, in essence, respecting the power of it. However, we don't want to stop at the conclusion, well, wow, evil is so powerful. That's only part of the learning. That evil, of course, is nothing compared to the almighty power of God. And yet we as human beings have to learn a little humility through all our various attempts to free ourselves and solve our problems. Over time, when things just don't work or only work for a short term and then another problem pops up, Bruno calls us to reflect on the possibility that maybe all problems have one cause and hence one solution: turning to a higher power, turning to the supreme power. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining in today, everyone for watching this video. I'm going to close this out with a prayer. Dear God, dear Bruno, please help us to be humble, recognize our need for God and nature, and please help us to deepen our faith in the almighty power of God as we humbly recognize the very mighty power of evil. Seeing these two forces and seeing what evil has done to us and seeing that we're not able to free ourselves from it, please help us decide to rely on God. Please bring to light all things that interfere with our connection to God and help us be willing to honestly look within ourselves and be willing to release these things. And so very humbly, we ask God, please have mercy on us. Please remove all forms of evil. And then please help us to then, moment by moment, watch our thoughts, being very mindful of the power of thought, and that's evil's favorite way to slink and slither into our lives. Please help us to seek connection with God moment by moment and to seek guidance in everything, to follow God. And please help us to bring these spiritual principles into every aspect of our life, to recognize that life itself is a spiritual learning, growing process, to reflect on every aspect of our lives and every aspect of our actions. And please help us to find healthy ways to nourish and support others. Or maybe more simply, please God, please Bruno, beloved Christ, please free us from evil so we can help others be freed from all evil. You're very welcome, Pamela. You're very welcome, Forever Loving. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I wish you all a God-filled day. Take care. Much love.